It is the first one of these videos of the month, so there's been a lot going on. January hasn't been quite a great year for IRL stuff, but there's been a lot of music and I've covered a lot of stuff in general. It's February, so I'm recording this, 5th of Feb, but yeah, I finally got around to working on this as it's been quite a bit busy, and I believe I'm also going to be starting a job, the same job I was doing last year, again this year, so that might be one of the things that makes it a bit harder for me to get reviews out, but I'll still see what I can do, because I'll still be trying to get loads of reviews out that I want to talk about. If there's an album I want to talk about, it's getting a separate video, but other than that, it's not. But yeah, this is Jan Albums of the Month. These are all the albums that I just wanted to put in this video instead of doing a separate video on. So let's start off with the worst albums, then I go to the alright records, and then I go to the best, the LPs of the week, month even. So yeah, let's get started with the worst. The new one by Grayscale, The Hart, was not an album I enjoyed personally. I think the biggest issue with this band is when you're making pop punk stuff, and often genre change hasn't always been the best thing for pop punk. I remember Trash Boat changed to more of a metalcore approach, and that just wasn't really a strong album in my opinion. And this has kind of gone the opposite way. This has gone for a more traditional, just poppy rock record. I can see fans liking it, but to be honest, I feel like it's just gone for a very generic sound, similar to what bands like You Me at 6 have done with Cavalier Youth. Apart from Give Benefit of the Doubt, Cavalier Youth and Take on the World are still pretty good records with some pretty good songs on there, so I just think it's a case of they just don't really manage to match the original ideas they've brought into this, and I don't think their sound necessarily translated well into it. I think with songs like Dance With Your Ghost, it's just not very fun in my opinion. I'm going to have to give it a 2. Unfortunately, I've had to put Larkin Poe Bloom in the worst. I don't think it's a terribly produced record, but I just think some of the ideas, refrains, hooks, yeah, they just kind of feel by the numbers a bit too basic and generic for me. I've definitely seen them do some better stuff before, at least on this, and there are some fine tracks here, but I wouldn't say it's a solid listen in my opinion. It's just kind of a really whatever record. I guess I could take it or leave it, but I'm not quite feeling the ever forth going back into it, so I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5, I'm afraid. We have the new album by Tigress, Rubored, or Bored, which the whole feeling of this record, I kind of feel I'm a bit bored listening to it. I'm not trying to make it as a little snarky joke, but I find the album just kind of lacks much uniqueness to it. It feels like kind of the softer, slight punk rock stuff that blends into more indie throughout the record. There's a little bit of that energy for sure, but a lot of it just kind of remains a watered down version of Yours Truly's type sound, pushing a big spiral and decline throughout the record as each track kind of gets slower and slower. I even find the second half, you notice that after Silence, going to She's a 10 and Broker But on the Mend, these just kind of feel like they just gradually decline into a slower, more kind of bland experience. It's unfortunately just not an album I really enjoy. I'm going to have to give it a 2 out of 5. Unfortunately, I'm not the biggest fan of the new Night Flight Orchestra Give Us the Moon record. There's a lot of bands I can kind of identify in terms of their sound just kind of accompanying the aesthetic of this record. I mean, Creeper and Meatloaf, I kind of get this presence of this kind of glam rock sound, but with a more modern take, so kind of more Creeper, less so of Meatloaf. And then you get Voyager just for the kind of 80s synth wavy rock with some pretty good ideas, and then you get the Leprous comparison where I'm going to compare them to Ina Solberg vocally, because he definitely has the voice that feels like it, but not hitting the high notes as he does. But the voice is interesting, probably the most interesting part of it. I think the songs aren't awfully structured, but I just find that just to kind of be this approach we've heard many times. They're not really pushing a sound that I think is personally unique to them. It just feels like it's a mishmash of a lot of other artists I've heard, and I'm just not really the biggest fan of it, to be honest. If you like it, I understand that, because it's certainly not bad quality. I just kind of think it's it's a structure we've heard a lot, especially if it's got the 80s glam rock aesthetic to it, but I'm not a big fan of it. I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5. Now we're moving on to the Alright records. We got a brand new album by Mogwai, a Scottish post-rock band that has been doing quite well for themselves. I remember the fact that one of their more recent records actually topped the UK charts, which is pretty nice to see post-rock getting that sort of attention. Mogwai has had some pretty good stuff, but in my opinion the Badfire isn't anything exceptionally good. It's nice to see a more positive, upbeat record this time around, and you definitely get that with tracks like Fans I Made of Flesh and God Gets You Back as well. It's some pretty good stuff. I honestly find if you find this world bad, you should see Some of the Others is probably the strongest song on the record. I think there's a lot of cool variety this record has, but I don't think it's quite as consistent as it could be. I think some of the songs just feel a bit weird, like Pale Vegan Hip Pain. Weird title, and I just think the instrumentation of it isn't quite strong enough. It's an album that I think it has good ideas and it has a good concept, but the execution I think needs a little bit of work, to be honest. Got a brand new one by Avatarium, or Avatarium. I'm gonna assume it's Avatarium. Between You, God, the Devil and the Dead. Yeah, this kind of just sounds like their music again. Not the most original stuff out there. I don't think there's any song that necessarily pulled me in as much as I do kind of prefer The Fire Along For and Death Woes Your Sting a little bit more when it comes to this, but they keep the progressive rock elements. They've got that doom metal signature sound that they just kind of intertwine these elements, and you still get something good at the end of the day, but I'm not that big on it. I think it's just an alright record, in my opinion. A brand new one by the Hellacopters, Overdriver. It's fine. I think it pays homage to the older sort of hard rock 80s sound quite fine. I think it's got a nice place in the modernised era of the genre, but yeah, I don't think it's anything incredible. I think every song just kind of delivers you a standard experience, which is fine. I don't think it needs it to be anything else. It's just a good record. Decent, goodly good record. But the new one by TheCityIsOurs, Will You Still Love Me? So this is a metalcore band that plays with post-hardcore elements and a little bit of electroniccore as well, as they are quite heavily inspired by bands like Electric Callboy and Icy Stars when it comes to the sound of this. Electric Callboy is the big go-to here with the kind of upbeat presence of this electronic additional sounds to the mix, as well as some of the songs being like Freak Like You and Hush Hush, kind of playing a little bit more into a less serious sort of dynamic, but you still get some somewhat serious written songs which kind of remind me of the Rehab album from Electric Callboy. Not a bad album, but I think the premise that they have here just doesn't really utilise anything that feels as compelling to me. I think the songs are fine. I think all 12 tracks offer something decent, but I just don't think the album as a whole is that strong, so I'm going to give it just an alright rating. Finally, we are on to the best records of the month. Harakiri for the Sky, Scorched Earth is a good album in my opinion. There's been some great solid tracks. I don't think there's actually anything that delivers anything weak on it. I think it's just all good bangers there, but the only drawback I'd have to say that would bring it down a little bit is I'm just not the biggest fan of the vocalist. I think the vocalist when it comes to Uncleans, I don't think it's quite as impressive as a lot of other bands. I think it just kind of sounds a bit off, which is the only issue I have with this band, because instrumentally they've got some great post-metal elements to the sound, but it is just kind of that it brings it down. I think it's a pretty solid album still, and I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. Mirar Ascension is the brand new project from the French and Norwegian duo, as that's kind of both parties going for it. This is a foul inspired record that plays a lot with progressive metalcore, progressive metal, foul and mathcore, a little bit of death as well. It's just an all blend of it's an instrumental record from the band, and I think it's got some interesting moments. I think compared to their Meh EP, this is a stronger take in general. I think it does push a little bit more of creativity out of a limited EP sound for this, but can't say I'm huge on it. I think it still screeches some great elements at you. You get some pretty fun riffs and hooks, but with instrumental, you always got to keep changing it. And while they do that, it also kind of feels like they don't. A lot of the stuff that you get on this record feels kind of repetitive. It feels like, oh, I've heard this weird sound on a different instrumental track from here. And I think it's still got potential. It's a pretty decent record. But it's not one I'm really going to write home about. I think it's just fine what it is. It's a 3 out of 5 for me. Not bad at all. We've got a brand new album by a sort of band that hasn't really done much until more recently with their new record Impermanence. This Is No Eye Has Seen. It's actually a pretty decent metalcore record. It's got some nice melodies, some nice hooks. I think riffs as well, quite high up there. It definitely kind of punches you with that kind of average metalcore experience, but it's not too bad to have something that's a little bit more simple for that regard. This band kind of reminds me of Invent Anime, playing with sort of similar hooks, and even some of the vocal harmonies kind of remind me of Marcus Vick vocals, and then you also get some progressive elements that just kind of feel like they're going for a bit more of that progressive metalcore, but it feels like it's a little bit of that, not too much. Impermanence, yeah, it's not the most original concept or style, but it's fine. I don't mind this one. I'll give it a 3 out of 5. It's worth a listen. And that wraps up January albums of the month. So now we have to see what February has in store. So as I'm recording this, it is February, but we haven't really had the first full week of releases. And seeing there's a lot of stuff geared up, I imagine this video will be a lot longer for the February one rather than this. But yep, still we've had some pretty good stuff, and I think January has been a pretty interesting start. So here's to February. I hope you enjoy. Thanks so much for watching, and see you next video.